Every single year, millions of men around the world attempt to stop nutting as a part of No Nut November. And while this practice can be an extremely powerful catalyst, helping a lot of men to break free from porn, to quit compulsively releasing their energy, and unconsciously relating to sex, I also see it being done in a way that is dysfunctional, unhealthy, and in some ways, completely missing the entire point. You see, a lot of men turn towards No Nut November and treat it as a contest of willpower. They wear it like a badge of pride, measuring their masculinity by how long they can go without releasing. And then when it inevitably finishes or they slip somehow, they spiral into shame, thinking that they've failed. But what is really happening in this situation is that often we as men are pushing our nervous system and our sexual capacities beyond what they've been conditioned for. Because No Nut November is not a one-size-fits-all practice. In fact, it's not a challenge to conquer the way I see it. It's actually a mirror. It's a mirror that reveals your relationship with desire, your own emotions, and how you relate to that part of you. So in this episode, I want to show you how to approach No Nut November consciously, not as a repressive, strict, militant kind of practice, but rather as an initiation. Not as a battle against your desires, but rather a journey deeper into them. I really see this as an opportunity for men to learn how to explore their relationship to their sexuality, their relationship to the feminine, their relationship to things like pornography and ejaculation, which helps us ultimately to understand the deeper truths of who we are as men. So if you're new here, welcome to Awakened Evolution. My name is Jasper Brown, and I've been working with seed retention or semen retention for basically the last decade. I started these practices when I first journeyed to India in my mid-20s. I ended up doing several trips to India to practice sacred sexuality and start developing discipline around this aspect of myself. And in the beginning, I started it as a very strict, very repressive, kind of militant kind of practice, where I was forcibly trying to really, really contain that sexual energy and master it through force of will and discipline, like a sacrifice, which actually led me into compounding the shame that I already had around my sexuality. So every time I would accidentally ejaculate or I would have a wet dream, I would beat myself up. I would punish myself. I would think that I am failing because I wasn't spiritual enough or tantric enough. So over the years, I ended up softening my approach and started to be much more compassionate and forgiving with myself. And this actually allowed me to start healing my associations to sexuality, going into my trauma and the shame and my fear of the feminine and my fear of sexuality, my performance anxiety. And this led to things really shifting inside of me. It completely changed the way I relate to the feminine, the way I related to sex in general, the way I related to those parts of myself, and through all of that, the way I related to life itself. So I'm applying here this almost decade of experience, as well as the coaching that I've done with hundreds of men around the world on sex, relationships, and spiritual practices. I'm bringing all of that to this episode. So I want to start really by understanding what No Nut November is, to set up and approach this in a way so we can actually understand how to evolve this practice and how to do it consciously. So originally, No Nut November wasn't some esoteric kind of deep practice. It was really something that was born from Reddit culture and 4chan back in the day, in the early, mid 2000s, 2011, something like this. And the whole idea of it was pretty simple. You would basically go the whole month of November without ejaculating. No porn, no masturbation, no sex. And for a lot of men, this kind of started as a bit of a joke, a bit as, kind of friendly competition. But something about it really resonated. Because beneath the humor, I think there was a genuine cry for help. Men were needing to take back control of their sexuality in a world where our attention, our energy, and our dopamine receptors were being hijacked every single day by thirst traps and pornography and the entire sort of marketing apparatus of the world, which knows how to manipulate people's sexuality very, very well. And so this idea of somehow desexualizing our brains became very powerful. It spread. And it started to become a badge of honor. It started to be a challenge of willpower, a test of a man's dedication and self-control and self-discipline. How long can you go without nutting? How many days can you last? What happened when you relapsed? And for many men, this camaraderie and sense of belonging and like a feeling of being united in a sense of purpose was genuinely transformative. It changed their lives because they discovered more drive, more focus, more energy. When they started to do this practice of No Nut November, they realized how much their vitality was being wasted through unconscious release. But for many other men, it also became a bit of an ego game, a way to measure their masculinity through performance, and kind of ironically, a new form of addiction. This time, an addiction to repression and control, and a strict adherence to a kind of ideology. Because when you repress something without understanding it, you don't transcend it. You actually just create a new prison for yourself. And I've talked about this in a lot of depth in the recent episode that I did, Deconstructing the Red Pill. So you can approach No Nut November and go for 30 days and still be completely enslaved by your desires. You can kind of white knuckle your way through it an entire month and still be disconnected from your body. Still be avoidant towards your own emotions and your needs and desires, and ultimately your heart can remain very closed. So I want to make a clear distinction here. No Nut November is commonly practiced as something that is all about control. And while that has a certain value and utility, it's an important aspect or dimension or quality for men to develop. The deeper practice here is developing a conscious relationship to your sexuality. And conscious retention or semen retention, as I teach it, is actually about relationship. Relationship to your desires, relationship to your needs, relationship to your emotions and your urges, relationship to the feminine, and ultimately relationship to life itself. So this practice is not just a 30-day ego challenge. It's actually the first step for many men, or a very empowering step for many men in a lifelong initiation into presence, awareness, and self-mastery. So what I want to present to you is a conscious plan or a protocol to approaching No Nut November. And I created this for the men in my men's community who are banding together and we've decided to commit to No Nut November. And some of the guys raised this objection, like, I don't know if I can go 30 days. That seems like a lot to bite off, or I'm in a relationship and I have a partner and we make love. How am I supposed to go 30 days without ejaculating? Some of the men are trying to get pregnant and their wife or their partner is like needing them to ejaculate because they've got a short window of fertility that they need to capitalize on in the hope of creating a child. And this is what I mean by it's not a one size fits all. It's not a rigid black and white cookie cutter thing. And so what I've tried to create here and what I'm going to be presenting to you is a much more open, customizable framework that you can take and mix and match and choose your own adventure, so to speak. But embedded within that is still the fundamental principles that I think are really, really important for men to actually relate to this challenge in a healthy way. So if you're considering No Nut November, you want to figure out how to do it the right way or customize it to suit your specific circumstances, this is for you. This is what we're going to break down. So the first frame here is to think of this as a 30-day initiation. This is a training or a dojo space, a training in your energy, your awareness, and also your integrity and your alignment with the goals that you set and the things that you value. So we need to reframe the whole mission of it because we're not trying to beat No Nut November. It's not just a box to tick or a challenge to be won. What we're really trying to do here is we're trying to learn to feel, to sense, to know, and to understand ourselves. You're learning to stay present with your desires, with your urges, with your sexual needs, without being unconsciously ruled by them. So the intention, if we were to state it, sounds a bit more like this. For the next 30 days, I commit to staying in deep relationship with my desires instead of numbing myself. I don't want to avoid anymore. I'm not going to judge myself. I'm here to learn about myself. This is not about streaks. It's about self-knowledge. And ultimately, awareness, developing that capacity to see, know, and understand yourself, that's the win. Not perfection. Not white-knuckling your way through 30 days and repressing your sexual energy in order to tick the box. That's not what we're going for here. The second component that I want you to focus on is working with the body. So retention is not just a mental process. It's not just an idea. It's physiological. It's somatic. It's emotional. So each morning, I recommend men starting with a few minutes or some sort of embodiment practice. Deepening the breath into the belly, developing relationship with the pelvic floor, feeling into your balls or into your cock. You might need to do some movement practices to, bring movement into your hips or to release the tension that you carry in your body, because we all carry a lot of tension. There's a lot of repression. There's a lot of shame and a lot of unmet emotional content that gets stored in our tissues. And so I really recommend a daily discipline of some sort to just be in touch with your body, feel what's happening inside of you, feel where you're tense, where you're tight, where you're contracted, and start to feel how that energy moves in you. Where does the desire emerge? What does it make you want to do? How does that change your thoughts? How does it change how you feel? So some sort of daily movement practice is going to be really beneficial to help you to move that energy and start to become more conscious and self-aware. I also recommend having some moments of stillness and silence in your day to connect, to actually perceive and sense and feel even deeper without the distractions of movement. So I like to move, I like to breathe, and then I like to sit still and just be with myself and notice what's there. Maybe there's frustration, maybe there's tension, maybe there's neediness. And whatever's there, we need to give it some space. We need to let it emerge. We need to, again, develop relationship with it. So that when we start to feel sexual charge rising throughout the day, we're able to catch ourselves. We're able to notice it. We're able to actually witness what's happening. And then we can start to breathe into it. We can start to soften our body. We can start to do some practices to move that energy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. Because what we don't want to get into a battle with is we don't want to be oppositional. We don't want to demonize ourselves. We don't want to judge. We don't want to, enter into this like, there's this, I'm at war, this inner conflict. We want to become aware of that energy. We want to see it moving. We want to give it direction. We don't want to be in like, Depending how we approach this, maybe pornography is a very strong addiction for you, and there is a kind of control that we need if we're going to resist that temptation, and we need to go cold turkey. We need to break that habit. Then there's space for discipline. But what I'm advocating for here is not just resisting out of principle, but actually resisting or choosing, rather, making an intentional choice in those moments when you feel compelled to resort to your unconscious coping mechanisms. Because retention, or this act of No Nut November, it's about holding tension. We've got to learn to sit with tension. And then by doing that, by sitting with the tension rather than taking the easy path and just, going with our unconscious urges, because usually those unconscious urges are a way for us to avoid the tension that we don't want to feel. So by choosing to sit with the urges, choosing to metabolize that and to work with that, to breathe, to move, to try to give it a direction and try to choose a new behavior, we expand our capacity. We expand our nervous system's capacity to sit with and metabolize tension. And by doing that, our consciousness expands. We become more aware. We have more attunement, more refinement, more subtle perceptions will start to appear by doing this. This is one of the reasons why it's so powerful. Because instead of unconsciously going with the desires and the urges and the impulses, we're actually developing impulse control. We're developing nervous system regulation by doing breathing and sitting with and, choosing how we want to respond. This is building capacity. It can be also really powerful to track your triggers and to notice that every time you feel an urge to release, you can actually create a little bit of space there. You want to pause and ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Is there something that I'm trying to avoid? Why is that pattern there? Why does that exist? Maybe it feels comfortable to me. Maybe that's the familiar way. Maybe there's stuff there that I'm not comfortable with, or I don't like feeling, or there's parts of myself that I've rejected or compartmentalized. And watching porn or ejaculating or, going to have sex or get attention from my partner, maybe that's my way of avoiding facing the parts of myself that I'm not comfortable with or don't want to feel. So it's really powerful if we can catch those triggers. And I recommend actually keeping a logbook I have a book that sits on my desk, a notepad, and I number the days so I can actually track the days and see what did I become aware of on this day. Oh, I felt an urge to watch porn, or oh, I felt maybe I'm holding a bit of tension and my stress levels are high, and I felt the urge to ejaculate just so I could dump that tension. Or I saw, some sort of sexy content online that sparked that urge in me. Maybe I need to be careful about which websites I visit, or which accounts I let myself doom scroll on. The whole point is we want to take those moments of unconsciousness where we would usually just go about our business reactively or unconsciously and turn it into a process. Track those moments, start to unpack those moments and penetrate into that and figure out what the deeper mechanisms are. So sometimes it's going to be stress, other times it's going to be you're just bored, or there's a tendency that you're procrastinating doing the work that you should be doing. Maybe it's building your business or following your purpose or pursuing that woman that you want a relationship with, but there's a deep tendency in you to procrastinate and avoid doing the difficult thing. And so you take the easy path. It's much easier to just open Pornhub and watch some videos and jack off and dump that tension than to sit with the discomfort of not having everything that you want, or not having your shit together, or not having your life on track. Maybe it's the loneliness. Maybe it's the feeling of rejection that you're avoiding. Maybe it's a deep feeling of inadequacy or not enoughness that exists inside of you. So these moments, what I want you to try to see is that these moments are gold, because they will help you to see where you have been outsourcing your power, where you have been avoiding the deeper work, where your growth edges are, and where you might be able to turn towards instead of unconsciously running away. And those are opportunities. And by taking notes or tracking these triggers, you can write them down. You can see, it's like you catch them somehow. Instead of it just unconsciously passing through you and you just going about your day, you're catching those moments, you're logging them on the page, you're turning them into an object. Instead of just a lens that you're looking through, you're turning them into an object that you can observe, you can contemplate, and you can start to unpack the deeper psychology. And over time, you'll start to notice that the patterns will appear, and also your willpower and your capacity to control your urges and catch yourself in unconscious patterns, that will strengthen. And your capacity to feel and control, to direct yourself and to know yourself is going to expand, which is ultimately very masculine. We're building structure, we're building direction, we're building integrity, very masculine qualities. This is what we want. And, if you record these down, if you write and start logging these triggers, you can also take a photo of that and you can put it into ChatGPT. Use, ChatGPT or AI, whatever AI you use, that's your friend. It's going to help you to understand the deeper psychology underneath. So I would put into ChatGPT, I'm doing No Nut November, I'm doing the conscious protocol that Jasper has recommended, and I'm trying to become more aware of myself and my deeper psychological patterns and the way that I relate to sexuality. Help me understand these triggers. Give me a psycho-developmental analysis of what's happening in my life. This is one of the most powerful tools, the most powerful ways you can use AI is to mirror yourself and decode your psychology. Maybe you don't want to do therapy, you don't want to work with someone yet, but you have a therapist in ChatGPT if you ask it to analyze your patterns, your shadows, and your unconscious coping mechanisms. Super, super powerful. The next important step that I think we need to include in No Nut November is the process of transmutation of your sexual energy. So your sexual energy is your life force, and life is always moving. It's always evolving. If you don't direct it, if you don't choose and be intentional about how you want that life force to move, then it's going to move unconsciously. And it's going to find ways to get expressed unconsciously, because life never stops lifing. And if you're not conscious of the way that life is lifing, it will happen unconsciously, and your sexual energy will just start to leak. You'll start leaking energy. Maybe it's towards porn, maybe it's towards women, maybe it's towards your partner, maybe it's towards other women, or sexy Instagram models online, or whatever it is. You know, there's a lot of subtle ways your sexual energy will start to leak out. And so we want to be obviously moving in towards a deeper relationship with that, and to start to see how that happens. We're tracking those triggers. But tracking the triggers is not enough by itself. We need to do something with it. We need to direct it. We need to channel it. So when we feel arousal starting to rise, or that energy is starting to build, what we want to do is we want to, what I like to do is I like to slow things down. I like to sit, I like to breathe, I like to meditate, and I like to imagine or visualize that energy is circulating or rising up my spine. Anything that's dynamic, so the breath, this is why I recommend movement. Anything that gets the body expanding or contracting, like, you know, cold showers or cold exposure, exercise. You know, if we're moving, if we're running, if we're exercising, if we're breathing, if the body is contracting and expanding and contracting because of the temperature, this is helping things to move. The blood is getting pumped around the body. We're kind of changing our mental state. When you exercise or when you do breath work, you're essentially changing the chemistry of your brain and the chemistry of your body. You're changing the state of your nervous system. So we're creating activation, and when activation occurs, energy is more fluid. It's going to move easier. And these are the moments that we can basically start to apply our intentions towards that energy. So for example, if I've been going for, say, a week with semen retention, and I notice I start to have urges, I start to feel desire, I start to want to, you know, go and get my woman and I feel the urge to release. You know, I feel that tension starting to build. What we want to do is, those are the moments to start that work. Those are the moments to go for a run, do some breath work, sit down and meditate and breathe and consciously visualize that energy moving. Get that energy moving, mobilize that energy, and then the important part here is that we're going to direct that towards something else. We're going to direct it towards creativity, so we can pour that energy into whatever it is. You know, we might be building a business, we might be creating material or content or educational stuff, we might be creating art, you might be writing, you might be painting, you might be building a team of people and creating your product or whatever it is that you sell, or, you know, your mission. It's one of the best things that we can channel that energy into. Whatever it is that you're building, whatever it is that you're generating, whatever it is that you're creating, and hopefully you've found a way to serve, you know, to actually be of service in the world. This is one of the best outlets for that energy, because it's, you know, that life force that exists inside of us that wants to get expressed. We need to channel that into some other way that life gets expressed. And so if you don't have those outlets, then this is the invitation, is to start building those outlets. Start building a purpose. Start developing a way that you get to serve and contribute and give something back to life. Or if you're in a period of just self-discipline, self-mastery, and you're training and you're building your character and you're working on yourself, channel it into that. If you have a beautiful relationship, channel it into that. Channel it into your kids, channel it into your beautiful partner. That can be in a sexual way, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be in terms of intimacy. It can be in terms of depth of conversation. It can be, building the direction of where you're going together. It can be so many different things. So we want to have an intention. We want to have this energy wants to be in service to something, rather than unconsciously releasing just to regulate our nervous system and to dump the stress and tension that we're holding, or to lustfully waste that energy over pixels on a screen by watching porn. We want to direct that energy towards something, because the same energy that drives you to watch pornography or to go and have sex can also drive your mission, your purpose, the vision that you're creating for the relationship in general. Thinking further ahead, thinking 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. Create a vision and a map for your entire life. Isn't that worthwhile? Wouldn't that be something empowering for you to start doing? I'm not saying that you can't have sex. I'm not saying that you can't enjoy the fruits of life and experience pleasure. You absolutely can. But what I want to try to invite you into is let the pursuit of pleasure, let the pursuit of meeting your sexual needs be in service to something even greater than those things. This is how we actually start to create an attitude of sexual energy transmutation, that the sex and the life force itself is fuel for your meaning in life, for your mission, for your purpose, for your deepest expression of love, whatever that is for you. And if you don't have those things, then obviously this energy stagnates. Obviously it gets stuck. It becomes very heavy. It becomes, like blue balls. You start to feel this stagnation of the energy. So in order to break away from that, we need to have direction. We need to have a process of moving that energy and directing it towards something else. And this becomes like a superpower. It becomes extremely, extremely empowering. And in the last episode that I did around semen retention and sexual healing as a way for men to step into their power, I talked about this. I talked about how so many of the world's great visionaries and leaders and savants and mystics practiced retention because they saw, they had a greater mission. They had a deep, like, genius vision or creative thing that they were trying to bring in and birth into the world. And that energy became the fuel for that thing. So that's what we want to aim for. Or that's what we want to at least test as a hypothesis. Maybe this is possible. Maybe there's something here for me. The whole aim, in my view, of No Nut November is for men to step into a new relationship with their desires, their urges, their sexual energy, so they can maybe discover a new way of relating to it that might be more empowering. We also want to cultivate awareness instead of perfection. So if you release, it's not the end of the world. If you release consciously or unconsciously, it's okay. You haven't failed No Nut November, as long as you learn something from it. So you can log that in your book or in your diary, and you can ask yourself questions. What led to this release? Was there some emotional things that I was avoiding? Am I struggling with premature ejaculation and I haven't solved that problem for myself? Therefore, it's really difficult for me to control. So when I make love, it was inevitable. Is my partner on board? Did she want to, are we both addicted to me releasing? And that's just the way that we've done sex. Maybe I just felt too much pressure and it was starting to be uncomfortable. That's okay. Maybe you needed to release, and if you chose to consciously release and let that energy go, that was an intentional choice. Maybe I didn't do the breathing practices, or I wasn't directing that energy properly. I barely did any transmutation kind of exercises, so of course it built up. Maybe I don't have my business or my purpose or my, the relationship that I'm looking for, and my nervous system is overwhelmed and I needed to decompress. That's okay. Maybe you can ask, what could I do differently next time? Or from this point onwards, what am I going to try different? So I want you to, and this is where I see a lot of guys getting this wrong, is that it's just a rigid militant practice that if you fail, you've ruined it, you failed No Nut November. I don't like that frame. For me, that feels very limiting, very partial and incomplete. For me, every failure, in quotes, is feedback. It's in fact not a failure. Every time you ejaculate, or if you ejaculate, that's feedback. And you're going to learn something from that. You're going to see and be aware and check in with yourself. How did that make me feel? Why did I do that? How do I feel afterwards? Maybe you will feel like you failed. Maybe you can sit with the feeling of like, oh, I didn't succeed at No Nut November. Now I'm beating myself up. What are the other guys going to think? Or I relapsed and I watched porn and I feel guilty and disgusted that I did that. If you can be aware of the disgust, if you can sit with the feeling of failure, that's still valuable. That's still really useful. It might even be more useful, the fact if you can turn that into a conscious process and you can realize that there's a part of you that feels not good enough, or that you failed because you didn't tick the boxes or, do the thing that I committed to, that's still super, super valuable. So that's why I say this is not about purity. It's not about perfection. It's about empowering yourself by becoming present to whatever is happening, whatever is alive. This is the real spiritual practice. This is in fact the deeper attitude that I promote through all of my work. It's how do we turn whatever is happening into a conscious process and to be more conscious at the end of the day. I think it's also really important that we have a process of integration. If we start a commitment, if we're committing to this 30-day process, at the end of it, we don't just return to old habits. You don't just go and binge on porn on day 31, or the first day of the month, because you need to reward yourself like that. We actually want to have a process of integration where we sit down and ask ourselves, okay, what did I learn from this? What are my takeaways? Where did I struggle? What was a victory? How has my relationships to my desire changed? How do I feel about my body? How do I feel about my sexuality? What parts of myself have I met in this process? Powerful questions, ask yourself powerful questions. Again, this would be a moment to type in your takeaways and put that into ChatGPT and start a dedicated thread in ChatGPT or whatever AI you use to keep a cohesion between the ideas for the entire month and get it to track the whole process for you. And you can have it, at the end of it, you can say, give me a conclusion and extract the insights and wisdom from No Nut November for me and everything that we've talked about over this period. And I guarantee you that will be really valuable for you. You might find that at the end, your energy is high. You have deeper confidence. You have more creativity. Your awareness has been sharpened. And most importantly, the relationship to yourself will feel clearer, cleaner, and deeper. And that will happen regardless of the path that you took. You know, if you went 30 days with no ejaculation and succeeded in that way, or you had a windy road where you had some starts and stops and failures, maybe you had a relapse and then you got yourself back on the train and you kept going, you integrated that and you made some different choices, that's still a win. Maybe if your partner was not on board and she was making it difficult for you and she tried to make you ejaculate when you said you didn't want to because that's what she wanted, maybe there was it created a conflict and you had to have a deeper conversation about how things work in your relationship. That's a win. So the real test here is staying open. Is staying open to the process. Whatever that process is for you, it will be completely unique to your life, your circumstances, your level of development. And the whole idea here is to remain conscious to that process, to stay open to the fire of your own desires and learning to build a more conscious relationship. This is one of the greatest skills a man can master. To remain somehow like deeply present in the intensity of life and how that's emerging through you without needing to run away, without needing to escape, without needing to numb, distract, avoid, or procrastinate. If you can do that, then this is going to be super, super powerful. So some of you will have resistance from partners. You might say, I want to do No Nut November. Some partners will be like, yay, amazing, that sounds awesome for you, I'm excited. Other partners might not be so on board. So you can express that this is something that is meaningful to you, that this is something that you want to experiment with, that it might be a doorway into deeper intimacy, a deeper connection, a deeper relationship. And you can be open to discussing how that works in your unique situation and relationship. Maybe you make love once a week. Maybe you make love in the middle of the month. Maybe you can find a way that you still get the deeper connection with your partner. Maybe you try to go for non-ejaculatory intimacy, where you try to retain. And if that means you don't do penetrative lovemaking and you just do pleasure each other in other ways that are more easier to handle, where you're less likely to lose your energy, that's okay as well. Maybe you can give yourself permission to experiment with that. And actually, this practice, semen retention in general, is an incredibly powerful way to actually discover orgasm without ejaculation. If you can retain and you can circulate that energy and you can experience and start to develop more capacity to hold pleasure in your system and hold more tension in your system, if you can build that tension and get close to the point of no return and then back away and close to the point of no return and back away, this is how I actually discovered orgasms without ejaculation for the first time. And these became extremely intense experiences. And you will feel that, man, I'm absolutely charged. I'm high on life. And these non-ejaculatory orgasms can spill out and last for dozens or, tens of minutes. It's wild. So you might bring that as a frame to your relationship. My love, I want to experiment with No Nut November. I'm going to try to retain. I'm not close to the idea of ejaculating, but I want to try. I want to see what's here for me. I want to give this a shot. I'm going to see how long it goes. If it starts to feel uncomfortable, I'm going to try to work with that. And maybe I will choose to release at a certain point. But if I choose to release, it's going to be intentional. Or if I accidentally release, I'm going to sit with it. I want to make it a conscious process. I want to sit with it and feel into it. And if I feel shame, or if I feel disgust or frustration, I need to be with that. I need to validate that. And I would love your support. And what I really hope is that this can be a practice that deepens our relationship, and that helps us to understand each other and discover new ways of creating intimacy with each other. So when I first started doing semen retention, one of the things that I noticed in my relationship was that it felt like the lovemaking never ended. We would have these long, intimate experiences with no release, no ejaculation. So it would feel like, whoa, it feels like we never finished. And then we would meet, the next day, and we would feel this intense chemistry and missing each other. And then we would keep making love, and that energy just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It was fascinating. And so when we accumulate energy in our system, we start to become aware of all these subtle sensations, all these like different states. Like your mind will be in a different state of consciousness. You will feel different. And I did an episode on the different states of meditation: the gross, subtle, causal, non-dual. And really what happens when we start to charge the energetic body by not ejaculating for a certain period of time, we start to become much more aware of the subtle states of consciousness. You'll feel your dreams, your imagination, what you can sense and perceive in your, let's say, like theoretically, your aura somehow gets charged with all of this energy, and you start to notice all of these new subtle perceptions and energies and sensations moving inside of you. And that's wild, And your partner will feel that. The feminine feels that. She will start to be, she'll be sort of like magnetically drawn to you in a certain way. She'll feel turned on. She'll feel like she feels you in a deeper, somehow mysterious kind of way. There's a kind of polarization that occurs when you have more energy, So that is something that you can discover by approaching No Nut November consciously. And that's why I say that this is so much more than just trying to control and resist the urges to come. There's all these additional layers and dimensions that you can discover by applying this practice, and that is the real gold. And so I wanted to bring this as a part of the conversation. Let's customize it. Obviously, you need to take into account your unique life situation, what's possible for you, what you've discovered so far, and what you might be open to exploring or doing differently for the next month ahead. And use this as a moment, to deepen the relationship with yourself, deepen the relationship with your partner, to maybe clean up the relationship or start to heal your associations with pornography, with ejaculation, with maybe sexual trauma that you've experienced in the past. And that's why in the previous episode I talked so much about this link between semen retention and sexual healing, because by bringing consciousness and awareness to this part of us in this process that we usually do very unconsciously, we start to uncover all of this gold, all of these insights, and a new way starts to be revealed. So that's it for this episode. I hope you found this valuable, and that this has given you a more conscious frame for approaching No Nut November. If you haven't done this before, really encourage you to give it a go. And if you've done it before, this is an invitation to do it a bit differently, to maybe add some of the things that I've talked about. Add Add a breathwork practice, add a meditation into the process, record your triggers, journal about it, use ChatGPT to analyze and understand and interpret the psychological and developmental nuances and the mechanics of what's happening. Make sure you integrate at the end. And above all else, enjoy, enjoy the process, enjoy the practice, enjoy the work. It's ultimately hopefully a pleasurable experience that will open up new doorways into deeper intimacy, deeper self, deeper sexual experiences, deeper relating with yourself and with the feminine or with your partner, whoever that is. And if you're doing No Nut November, if you're committed to it, you don't need to do it alone. I know of many other groups out there. I've seen great coaches, men that are doing this work who offer containers for this. Sign up. Jump in with a bunch of dudes that are doing it. It makes it so much cooler. It makes it so much more interesting. You'll learn so much more by having other men share their insights, share their wins, share their setbacks and their failures or things that they could have done better. You'll double, triple, 10 times the results that you get by exposing yourself to the results that other men are getting. I'll be running a No Nut November challenge inside my men's group. So if you've been thinking about jumping in, we've got a bunch of guys who are committed to the process. We're going to be doing the challenge for the next 30 days and checking in with each other and doing the practices. And I'll be just bringing additional frame and accountability so that we can feel supported through the process and we can extract the gold to master our energy and sharpen our focus and to become more conscious. That's the goal. So if you want to join, come and jump in with us. For those of you that want to do that, I'm going to give a bonus this month for anyone who jumps into my men's group. You're going to get the Legendary Lover course, which is my full training on men's sexual mastery. I'll be chucking that in as an additional bonus for free. For anyone who signs up to the membership this month, you'll get both the Conscious Masculine course and the Legendary Lover course as a part of the membership, as well as weekly coaching calls with me and the other brothers. So that's a pretty sweet deal. And also for any of you that are struggling with personal issues and you don't want to work with it in a group environment, you might like to reach out and consider working with me one-on-one. I've still got a bit of space open for mentorship. I've had a bunch of other guys jump in recently, but I've got space for a couple more if anyone else wants that support. This could be a really powerful moment to take some really empowering steps to frame up your personal growth and development and to get some support and accountability and systems for really actioning that stuff. It's a super, super important and powerful thing you can do at some stage when you're ready. Lastly, I would really appreciate it if you leave a comment or leave a review of the podcast. It really helps me to grow this channel, and I love hearing you guys' feedback. It means the world, so thank you for that. And let me offer a final frame around this. So No Nut November, it's not just about semen retention. It's not even just about sexuality. Ultimately, it's about awareness. It's about understanding. It's about awakening. Because when you start to really practice this consciously and relate to this or yourself in a deeply conscious way, something profound happens. You start to see that your relationship with your sexuality is actually a mirror for the way that you relate to life. So if you collapse under your desires, if you collapse under pressure, if you're avoiding your own shadows, you're avoiding your potential. You're avoiding evolution. You're in opposition to the direction of life. Somehow. So if you chase pleasure compulsively, you will end up chasing meaning endlessly as well. So semen retention, when it is practiced consciously, is a way of saying to life, or saying to yourself, or committing to yourself in a certain way, that I'm ready to feel everything. I'm ready to face everything without running away. I'm ready to look in the mirror and see myself, like really, really see myself. And that's where the real initiation is here. That's where the boy becomes the man. Not because he dominates his desires, but because he learns to contain them, to witness them, and to bring intention to them. So when you can hold your sexual charge without collapsing or escaping, you develop a kind of inner authority. And that inner authority ends up translating into every area of your life. Your business, your relationships, your purpose, leadership. And that is why sexual energy mastery is so important, because that's emotional mastery. That's nervous system mastery. That's building the capacity to stand in the truth and to face the truth. This is real embodiment. That's what real spiritual embodiment is. Because when a man learns to hold his fire and his desire and bring awareness to that, that's when he becomes trustworthy. That's when he has integrity. That's when he becomes truly strong, grounded, and stable. That's what polarizes the feminine. That's what allows him to step into his purpose. That's what allows the evolutionary pulse of life to move through him in the most profound way. And so this is where it ties back to the broader mission of what I'm doing here with Awakened Evolution. Because this whole page, this is not about the path that I'm offering here and the content that I make, the things that I'm teaching. This is all about awakening. So we want to find the ways that we're escaping and sleeping and being unconscious and transmute that. We want to transmute it through the body, through relationships, through the fire of the human experience, and alchemize that into the fuel for transformation. This path is about integrating everything, the primal and the divine, the animal and the angel, sex and spirit, into one coherent, embodied truth that gets expressed through you, the yin and the yang. So the goal here isn't to transcend your desires, it's to illuminate them and to turn what once enslaved you into the thing that liberates you. That's the essence of the awakened masculine, in my view. Not control, consciousness. Not domination, devotion. And when we reach this level of integration, when we can feel everything without losing ourselves, that's where the real power comes. That's where we find peace. That's where our deepest purpose emerges. That's what this work is about. So if you're ready to face this, and if this conversation resonated with you, if you're ready to stop living on autopilot and start cultivating this deep mastery of your body, of your energy, of your awareness, then the invitation is here to keep walking this path with me. Because this This path of awakened evolution, this begins right here, right now, in this moment. Because it's only in the present moment do we stop running from the truth and learn how to actually walk in deep alignment with the truth.